Most people will spend their entire lives being mentally weak, and they don't even know it. They react instead of respond. They crumble under pressure. They let their minds be hijacked by noise, manipulated by emotions, and controlled by others. But here's what's disturbing. Everything you think you know about mental strength is wrong. The people who seem tough are often the most fragile. The ones who appear calm are usually the most dangerous. And the difference between mental weakness and true psychological power? The reality is far more dangerous than you realize. Because mental toughness, it's not what you think. It's more dangerous, more powerful, and once you get it, you're different. But the path there doesn't always start with some heroic decision. Sometimes it starts with a quiet crack, barely noticeable, a slow unraveling beneath the surface. For me, it started like that. Not with chaos, but with stillness. No yelling, no tears, just silence. It happened on a random Tuesday. No warning, no build-up, just a quiet moment where everything stopped. I was sitting on the floor, staring at a wall, realizing I had nothing left to blame. Not my past, not other people, not the world, just me. That's the scariest moment of all, when you see that the only person keeping you small is you. Not because you're not capable, but because you've been hiding. You've been shrinking to make others comfortable, numbing yourself to avoid discomfort. And the truth hits you like a punch. This version of you doesn't survive what's coming. So I made a decision. Quiet, sharp, final. No more chasing validation. No more excuses. I wouldn't break down. I'd build up, not louder, but calmer. Not angrier, but more precise. I would become the kind of person who doesn't flinch, who doesn't explain, who doesn't beg for understanding, because emotional control is strength. Silence is power, and if you can control your reactions, no one else can control your life. But here's the thing they don't tell you about choosing strength. You lose people. You outgrow habits that used to comfort you. You become a mirror that makes weak people uncomfortable, and they'll blame you for that reflection. And at first, it's lonely. You'll wonder if you've made a mistake, but you haven't, because on the other side of that decision is power. Not the kind that screams, the kind that radiates. But I wasn't prepared for what that choice would cost me, because when you stop being weak, life stops treating you gently. It tests you. It throws chaos at you. And in just a second, I'll show you how I survived that storm and what it taught me about building a mind no one can shake. But first, let me tell you that discipline doesn't start in the gym or on a mountain or in some life or death moment. It actually starts way earlier with a single decision. I said I'd do it, so I'm going to do it. That's it. That's where power is born. Because the people you admire, the ones who move with calm, calculated certainty, they don't have more time or more motivation. They just keep the promises they make to themselves over and over until that promise becomes identity. Discipline isn't a punishment. It's a ritual. Wake up when you said you would. Move your body when it's tired. Work when your brain screams for a break. And over time, you become the kind of person even you trust. That's the real win. Because when you trust yourself, nothing can shake you. Let me tell you a little bit about the science behind it. Dopamine, the chemical we all chase, isn't really about pleasure. It's about anticipation. Your brain releases dopamine not when you get the reward, but when you expect it. So when you train yourself to crave the process, the reps, the reading, the writing, you've already won. Discipline rewires your reward system. You stop needing constant motivation. You start craving the work itself. And this is where most people tap out. They try for a few days, then the pain hits, the boredom, the doubt, and they go back to comfort, but not you. Because the more you resist distraction, the stronger your mental muscle gets. And eventually, that silence you used to run from becomes home. But even with discipline, there's one battle most people lose without even knowing it. Because it's not the hardest part that breaks them. It's the stillness that comes after. Let me show you why mastering your mind in those quiet moments is what truly separates the average from the elite. You will never meet a louder enemy than the voice inside your own head. It doesn't scream, it whispers, just sleep in. You've done enough. Take it easy today, you'll start tomorrow. That's inner resistance. And if you've ever tried to build something meaningful, you've heard it, loud and clear. Most people don't fight it. They negotiate with it, obey it, let it lead. But strong minds, they don't ask for comfort. They confront that voice. They question every excuse it throws at them until it shuts the hell up. This is the war no one sees, and it happens every day. Not once, but 100 times a day. Every time you choose focus over distraction, grit over comfort, discipline over doubt. If you master your mind, you master your life. If your mind masters you, it'll destroy everything. That quote didn't hit me until I saw it happen in real time, because your mind isn't always your ally. Sometimes it's a saboteur in disguise. It knows exactly how to rationalize your downfall, while convincing you it's self-care. You'll hear it say, "This one time won't matter," but it always matters, because every time you obey that voice, you give it power. But when you resist, even once, you reclaim it. I started writing down the lies that voice told me, and I started answering back, not with motivation, but with movement. I didn't feel like doing the thing, so I did the thing. Not because I was ready, but because I refused to lose the war by default. There will come a time, a test, that will show you who you really are. A moment of silence so sharp it felt like a scream. What you do next, in that silence, is what builds an unbreakable mind. And I will tell you in a second how I felt when this test came my way. You need to know that there's a moment after all the chaos, after the battle in your head, when something shifts. You stop reacting. You stop proving, and people feel it. Not because you're louder, but because your silence holds weight. When your energy becomes unshakable, the world starts treating you differently. People speak more carefully, they sense the discipline in your gaze, they feel the boundary before you even speak it. You don't need to puff your chest, you don't need to win arguments. Your presence does the talking. That's power. And here's what they don't tell you. True strength isn't explosive, it's still. It's the kind of calm that unnerves people. Because when everyone else is triggered, panicking, distracted, you're anchored, focused, unmoved. Science backs it up too. Studies show that mentally tough people regulate cortisol, the stress hormone, far better. They don't react fast. They respond slow, with control, with intention, and that's what makes them dangerous, in the best way possible. I started noticing it in small things. People stopped interrupting me. They leaned in more when I spoke. Even in conflict, I didn't flinch. Because when you've battled yourself, nothing outside can break you. But here's the catch. That calm presence, it scares people. It forces them to confront their own chaos, and not everyone's ready for that. Some will misunderstand you, others will try to test you. And that's when the next phase begins. The world, the circumstances will test you every time. The chaos will come knocking on your door, not to break you, but to see if you're ready. That's where most people fold. But not you. You've earned this silence. You've built this calm, and now you'll use it. Just wait until you see how. Something shifts when you finally stop caring about being liked. Not in a bitter, angry way, but in the kind of way that frees your soul. That kind of strength, it doesn't go untested. There's always a moment, a test, that doesn't announce itself. It just arrives. Quiet, sudden, brutal. Mine came when I had every reason to break. Everything I'd built started to crack. Old patterns whispered louder. People I thought I needed disappeared, but I didn't fold. I didn't run, because that's when you find out who you really are. Not when things are easy, but when the storm shows up uninvited. And the only thing standing between you and collapse is your mind. You stop chasing applause. You stop editing yourself to fit rooms that were never built for you. And you realize something most people will never realize. Approval is a drug, and the withdrawal hurts like hell. But once you detox, you'll never crave it again. That's when you become dangerous. Not because you want to fight the world, but because the world can no longer shape you. You stop performing. You start living. Every decision becomes cleaner. Every word becomes clearer. You stop saying yes when your gut screams no. You stop entertaining fake connections, shallow praise, surface level noise. Instead, you choose the truth. Even when it's inconvenient, you choose a purpose. Even when it's lonely, you choose you, finally, fully. And here's the wild part. The moment you stop needing validation is when you start earning respect. Not the loud kind, not the social media kind, the quiet kind, the kind that builds legacy. Because no one can manipulate a grounded mind. No one can distract a man or woman with direction. And no one can break someone who already knows who they are. So here's my challenge to you. What if your mind was so solid they couldn't move you? Not with rejection, not with flattery, not with fear. That's what this journey has been about all along. But here's what shocked me about building that kind of mental fortress. I discovered the biggest enemy wasn't my inner voice or external pressure. It was something far more insidious, the constant digital noise that hijacked my brain before I could even access that stillness. So I made a radical decision that changed everything about how I think, feel, and show up in the world. It all started with a few taps on my phone. delete Instagram, log out of Twitter, silence every notification, and then airplane mode for good. No announcement, no I'm taking a break or I'll be back soon kind of story. Just gone, disappeared. At first, it felt rebellious, like I was escaping something no one else could see, but by the second hour, I wasn't free, I was twitching. You don't realize how addicted you are until you reach for your phone, and nothing happens. No badge, no vibration, no dopamine drip. It's just pure silence. Your brain panics, it screams for distraction, it wants someone, anyone, to validate your existence. You don't miss people, you miss being seen. The first 24 hours felt like withdrawal. I caught myself opening apps I'd already deleted, phantom scrolling. I was craving noise like it was oxygen. But here's the thing, no one warns you about. When the noise stops, your thoughts get louder. They actually really do. And I'm not speaking of the nice ones. It's mostly the ones you've been avoiding. And that was just day 1. By day 3, my brain started doing something strange. I didn't want validation anymore. I was looking for answers. I started digging into emotions I thought I'd buried. Old insecurities, fears, patterns. And in just a second, I'm going to show you exactly what surfaced. But before that, ask yourself, what would your mind start screaming about if the noise stopped today? Now let me show you what happens when you go completely undercover, when every sound goes silent and all that's left is you. By day 4, I was convinced my phone had buzzed, except it wasn't even in the room. It wasn't even on. Phantom vibration syndrome. It's real. Studies show nearly 90% of people experience it. Your brain actually hallucinates notifications because it's so used to getting them. That changes everything. Your nervous system is now wired to expect distraction. You anticipate a dopamine hit, even when there's nothing to trigger it. And when that hit doesn't come, you spiral. I tried to sit down and relax. No phone, no screen, just me. But after 5 minutes, I was pacing. My fingers kept reaching for something that wasn't there. So I did what any adult would do in a moment of crisis. I built a blanket fort. Yeah, a full-grown blanket fort in the living room, candles and all. Not because I was bored, but because I had to relearn how to exist without input. We've forgotten how to be bored. We've forgotten how to be alone with a thought for more than 60 seconds. Because silence, it doesn't feel like peace anymore. It feels like punishment. We become so addicted to input that we treat stillness like suffering. Here's where it got even weirder. Something started shifting in my brain. Without a flood of external noise, my attention span began to stretch. Tasks that used to feel overwhelming started to feel possible. And in just a moment, I'll tell you what unlocked next. The part where I started accessing mental clarity I didn't even know I had. But before we go there, ask yourself this. When's the last time you sat in silence and actually felt at peace with it? Most people can't handle the quiet, because that's when the real thoughts start creeping in. So take a breath, because we're about to step into that silence and see what it's been trying to tell you all along. The first few days, the silence was unbearable, but then it got louder. Not outside, inside. Without constant distraction, every old thought, every buried emotion, every what if I'd been dodging came flooding in. It felt like my brain was detoxing, but I kept going. And then something shifted. Around day 9, I woke up without an alarm. Not groggy, not annoyed, just calm. My sleep deep, my anxiety down, my mind clear. It was like I'd been carrying a low-level static in my head for years, and someone finally turned the dial. Science backs this up. When you unplug, your cortisol levels, the hormone tied to stress, drop significantly. Your prefrontal cortex gets room to breathe, and suddenly, your brain does what it's designed to do, create. I started cooking actual meals, writing thoughts in a notebook. I sat with a cup of tea, no phone, no background noise, just observing how it tasted. And for the first time in years, I felt present, not chasing, not comparing, just here. By week 2, I started noticing something I hadn't felt in years. Joy in the little things, the sun through the window, the way my thoughts connected without effort, the ideas that bubbled up when I wasn't trying so hard to be productive. It turns out solitude doesn't just quiet the noise, it amplifies the truth. And in that space, healing begins. But what came next was even more powerful. Because when your mind clears, you start to see who you've really been avoiding all along. Somewhere around day 17, it hit me. Not like an explosion, more like a whisper I finally had time to hear. I wasn't bored anymore. I wasn't restless. I was still. And in that stillness, I found something I didn't even realize I'd lost. A sense of control. See, when you unplug, your brain stops chasing the next dopamine hit. Instead, it settles. And when it settles, it starts to create, to reflect, to dream again. I picked up my old journal, the one that had been sitting on my shelf for months, and just started writing. Not for content, not for performance, just for me. I reapproached hobbies I'd abandoned, sketching, running, even building things with my hands. And every one of them felt like me coming back to life. Here's a fun fact most people don't know. When your brain detaches from constant external input, scrolling, notifications, pings, it starts operating in what neuroscientists call the alpha state. It's a wave pattern linked with deep thinking, creativity, and emotional regulation. In other words, I wasn't just detoxing from the internet, I was rewiring my brain to feel again. I began to experience joy in ways I hadn't in years, not from likes or comments, but from presence, from purpose, from a quiet sense that, for once, I wasn't reacting, I was choosing. And that shift, it changed everything. Let me tell you, when you rediscover your own rhythm, you stop living by someone else's. But I couldn't stay hidden forever. I knew I had to find my way back. How did the world react, and how did I respond? I thought coming back would feel like a massive moment, like fireworks. I imagined people would notice, ask where I'd been, and say they missed me. But they didn't. The truth? Nothing changed. The world moved on. No confetti, no applause. A few messages, a few likes. That was it. And at first, that hurt. But then, something clicked. The silence wasn't an insult. It was a revelation. The world didn't stop when I disappeared, but I did. And in that stillness, I learned something most people never do. Your value doesn't come from how loud you are or how many updates you post. It comes from how deeply you live. Before this, I was showing up online more than I was showing up for myself. Posting, scrolling, reacting, just to feel seen. But now, I've flipped it. I create before I consume. I live before I share. I think before I speak. And it's not because I don't want people to notice me. It's because I no longer need them to. Because if no one noticed you were gone. Maybe it's time to rethink how you've been showing up in the first place. Are you just filling space, or are you actually building something? This isn't about deleting your accounts and disappearing forever. It's about taking ownership of your attention. It's about learning that stillness isn't laziness, quiet isn't failure, and solitude, it might just be your secret weapon. So here's my challenge to you. Take 24 hours, no notifications, no timelines, no noise, just you and your thoughts, and watch what starts to surface. You'll feel the withdrawal, but then you'll feel the clarity. If the noise has been getting too loud and your mind's been feeling all over the place, it might be time for a real shift, not just on the outside, but deep within. Reclaiming your focus changes everything. That digital detox stripped away the noise, but it also revealed something crucial. Not everyone operates with the same mental architecture. Some people crumble under pressure, while others thrive in chaos. Through years of observation and personal experience, I've identified exactly 5 traits that separate the mentally fragile from the mentally dangerous. These aren't personality quirks. They're learnable skills that rewire how you respond to everything. Let me tell you, most people walk through life with an untrained mind, reactive, fragile, and constantly needing reassurance. They avoid discomfort like it's poison. They think stress is a sign to stop. And when they fail, even once, they start questioning their entire identity. But here's what no one teaches you growing up. You don't rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your mental strength. And if that strength isn't trained, you fall hard. Most people are mentally soft. One bad comment ruins their momentum. One unexpected challenge, total collapse. Even silence, just not hearing back from someone, is enough to make their confidence evaporate. Most people walk through life fragile, waiting for permission, begging for approval, collapsing under pressure. But the ones who rise, they think differently. Because when your mind is silent, focused, and unshakable, people don't know what to do with you. You stop reacting, you stop explaining, you stop asking for space, and instead, you become the presence that takes it. You've seen it. You've probably felt it too. That quiet unraveling, that spiral of overthinking, that's not weakness by default. It's just what happens when your mind has never been put through fire. You're not broken, you're just untested. But here's the truth that separates average from elite. Strong minds aren't born. They're built, not through motivational speeches or surface-level affirmations, but through intentional pressure. Real strength gets forged in boredom, in pain, in silence, in moments no one claps for. Most people avoid all that, so they stay weak, reactive, exposed. But what if you trained your mind like a muscle? What if you actually rewired your reflexes to thrive under pressure? That's how the powerful move. Let me show you exactly how you can do this too. Here are the 5 traits of a mentally dangerous person. Starting with number 1, emotional neutrality. I remember a night when everything around me collapsed. A friend betrayed me. A project I poured months into failed. I wanted to scream, to rage, to vent it all out like I used to, but I didn't. I sat still, watched the chaos burn around me, and said nothing. That's when I realized most people lose their battles not because of what's thrown at them, but how they react. Mentally dangerous people don't react. They respond. Emotions still rise. Anger, frustration, sadness, but they don't spill them. They channel them. Like a sniper holding breath under pressure, they wait. They study. You don't show your emotions. You weaponize them. Psychologically, it's called affect labeling, naming your emotions to regulate them. Studies show that simply recognizing your anger reduces amygdala activity. That's power. Being aware, not explosive. People fear what they can't read. If your face stays calm while everything else shakes, you instantly become the most unpredictable person in the room. And unpredictability? That's dominance. But how do they stay calm when the world's on fire? It's not luck. It's built. Through control, inner control to be precise, which leads to number 2. It is inner control over outer chaos. When I started taking full ownership of everything, my wins, my losses, even my mood, everything changed. I stopped blaming my environment. I stopped saying, it's just a bad day. Number I made it 1. My choices, my patterns, my fault. The moment you take full responsibility, you take full power. Most people hand their control to noise, notifications, opinions, bad weather, someone else's tone. But mentally dangerous people build fortresses within. If it's storming outside, they don't panic. They tighten the bolts. There's neuroscience behind it too. The locus of control, a concept in psychology, shows that people with an internal locus, believing they shape their own fate, are more successful, more resilient, and less anxious. They don't seek a perfect world. They shape themselves to handle an imperfect one. And once you stop blaming, you stop reacting fast. You start playing the long game. Which brings us to number 3. Delayed reaction equals strategic power. Ever notice how the strongest people in the room usually speak last? Not because they're shy, but because they're collecting data. I had a mentor once who rarely spoke during meetings. When he finally did, people leaned forward because he never wasted a word. He processed, then struck. The less you speak, the more power your words carry. This is the opposite of what most people do: interrupt, over-explain, defend themselves before they've even been attacked. But when you pause, you gain altitude. You see the game from above, not within the panic. It's a principle borrowed from cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, where you learn to insert space between stimulus and response. That space, that's your throne. But what drives that kind of precision? Obsession. The right kind of obsession. Number 4. Focused obsession. You can feel the difference when you're around someone who's obsessed. Their energy is different. Their presence is heavier, not because they're loud, but because they're dialed in. I remember giving up social media for 90 days just to write every single day. No scroll, no fluff, just the work. People said I disappeared. What really happened? I showed up for myself. If it doesn't align, it doesn't get your energy. That's what obsession is. It's not crazy. It's clean. Ruthless focus. You trim distractions like fat off meat, when the brain rewards repeated focus toward one goal by filtering out irrelevant noise. And that's how mastery is built. One silent rep at a time. And the most dangerous part, they don't need anyone to see it. They're powered by silence. And somewhere around here is where most people give up, but you're not most people. Let's make this personal. Drop the one habit you're committing to for the next 21 days in the comments. Doesn't matter how big or small it is, what matters is that it's yours. I'm right here with you, reading every single one, cheering you on, and showing up alongside you. Let's build something real together, one day at a time. Building a strong mind isn't a mystery. It's a decision, a daily one. Not built in one epic morning or one hard workout, but brick by brick, discomfort by discomfort. Let me show you how. First, discomfort reps. Every day I do something uncomfortable on purpose. Cold showers, speaking up when I'd rather stay silent, waking up when every cell begs me not to. Not because I'm trying to be tough, but because I'm raising my threshold. That's the rule. Discomfort isn't punishment, it's training. When you voluntarily walk into stress, it stops controlling you. Your nervous system adapts, your tolerance expands. That same cold that used to shock you becomes background noise. But just doing hard things isn't enough if your thoughts are still weak. That's where journaling came in. I used to live in my head. overthinking, looping, drowning in what ifs, until I picked up a pen and put it all on paper. Your mind is a battlefield, and journaling is how you take command of it. Write it down, the fear, the doubt, then question it. Strip it bare. Don't let your brain gaslight you into smallness. This is where weak thoughts die, and new beliefs get planted. Now, silence isn't just peace, it's practice. One of the most dangerous habits I built: silence. Real, intentional silence. Saying nothing. Not because I didn't have something to say, but because silence holds more power than noise. Strong minds don't flinch when provoked. They observe. They choose when to speak and when to let silence do the talking. Every second you hold your reaction, you build weight, control, presence. But even with silence, there's still one enemy inside, and it whispers constantly. You know what really broke me? Not the haters, not the trolls. It was my own voice, the one that lived inside my head. I'd say things like, "I'm not good at this," or "I can't stay focused." And my brain, it listened. It made it real. So I rewrote the script. Now when that voice says you can't, I say, I'm learning to dominate this. You don't fix your mindset with hype. You fix it with language. Shift your internal dialogue. Shift your life. And once you write the new script, your decisions become final, unshakable. Decide once, then don't flinch. Mentally strong people don't revisit decisions. They decide and they show up, even when it's hard, even when they're tired, even when no one's watching, because true strength isn't found in options, it's forged in commitment. No backup plan, no safety net, just the belief that no matter what happens, you won't break. And when you build that kind of mind, nothing else can compete. It didn't happen during a breakdown, not during a speech, not in front of a crowd. It happened in a moment no one saw. I was standing in my kitchen, hands shaking, breath shallow, everything in me screaming to lash out, to panic, to fall apart, but I didn't. I stood there, silent, still, and for the first time, I didn't run. That was the moment I knew I was different. I didn't need validation. I didn't need someone to understand. I just needed to hold the line, and that decision, to stay grounded when everything inside was breaking, that's when the shift begins. You stop chasing applause, and people start listening, not because you got louder, but because your silence started carrying weight. You'll notice it. Slowly, people stop interrupting you. They hesitate before lying to you. They look at you longer, not because of how you look, but because of how you hold yourself. You become the mirror. And when people see themselves reflected back in your stillness, they either level up or leave. That's not ego. That's gravity. This isn't power built on intimidation. It's power built on presence. You want to be unbreakable? Start small. Start now. Don't wait for chaos to build calm. Discipline is built in silence. Strength is built in solitude. Now here's where everything I've shared connects to something even deeper. You can build mental strength, master digital boundaries, and develop all 5 traits of psychological power. But if you're still operating from the wrong identity, you'll always revert to old patterns. The real transformation happens when you stop forcing yourself to be different and start becoming the type of person who naturally does different things. A few months ago, I reconnected with an old friend from college. We'd both started our entrepreneurial journeys around the same time, fresh out of school with big dreams and zero experience. For the first year or so, he was crushing it. His dropshipping business was pulling in consistent 5-figure months while I was still struggling to get my freelance marketing agency off the ground. But when we met up recently, the tables had turned. His business had stagnated while I'd managed to build something sustainable that was finally generating good money. What struck me wasn't the role reversal, but the conversation we had about why things had shifted. That conversation revealed something profound about how success actually works, and it's completely different from what most people think. Today, I want to share that insight with you because it's changed everything about how I approach goals, and I believe it'll do the same for you. Before we dive in, let's break down how most people think about getting what they want. There are essentially 3 levels to any goal you're trying to achieve. First, there's the external result, the thing you actually want. Maybe it's hitting 6 figures in your business, getting in the best shape of your life, or building a relationship that actually lasts. That's the outcome everyone focuses on. Second, there are the processes and behaviors that create that result. For business, it might be consistently creating content, reaching out to potential clients, or improving your skills. For fitness, it's showing up to the gym, eating right, and getting enough sleep. These are the actions that logically lead to your desired outcome. Third, And this is where it gets interesting. There's being the type of person who naturally does those things. This is about identity, about who you fundamentally see yourself as being. Let me tell you, most people get stuck focusing on levels 1 and 2. They set goals, they even know what actions to take, but they don't actually take them consistently. And here's why. My friend, here's something that might surprise you. Winners and losers often have identical goals. Every person competing in the Olympics has the same goal: to win gold. Every entrepreneur wants to make more money, serve more customers, and build something meaningful. Every person trying to get in shape wants to lose weight and feel confident. So if the goals are the same, what creates the difference in results? It's not the goal itself. Writing down your goals might give you direction, but it's not what actually drives success. I learned this the hard way when I spent months writing detailed business plans and vision boards, only to find myself procrastinating on the actual work. The difference lies deeper in the behaviors and actions that create the results. But even that's not the full picture, because here's the thing. Most people already know what they need to do, and I'm going to share the exact question that transformed my friend's business and doubled my income in just 4 months. But first, you need to understand why knowing what to do isn't enough. If you want to grow your business, you probably know you need to create more content, reach out to more potential clients, and consistently deliver value. If you want to get in shape, you know you need to exercise regularly and eat better. If you want to build better relationships, you know you need to communicate more effectively and show up consistently. The activities that lead to success aren't mysterious, they're actually pretty obvious. So why don't people do them? This is where my conversation with my friend got really interesting. He knew exactly what he needed to do to revive his business. He could list the activities that had worked for him before, but he wasn't doing them anymore. The problem wasn't knowledge, it was identity. Here's the simple hack that served me better than any productivity system, morning routine, or goal-setting framework. When faced with any decision, I ask myself, what would the type of person I want to become do in this situation? For years, my go-to question has been, what would someone who's already successful do? Sometimes I get more specific, what would someone running a 7-figure business do? Or what would the most productive person I know do right now? This question cuts through all the noise and gets straight to the action that matters. Your identity is essentially a voting system. Every action you take is a vote for the type of person you believe yourself to be. If you see yourself as someone who follows through on commitments, you'll find ways to honor your word. If you see yourself as someone who takes care of their health, you'll naturally make better food choices. The beautiful thing about this approach is that it's self-reinforcing. The more you act like the person you want to become, the more evidence you have that you actually are that person. And the more evidence you have, the easier it becomes to continue acting that way. I've never been a fan of affirmations. Standing in front of a mirror saying, I am successful or I am confident feels hollow when your actions don't match your words. Your brain is too smart to fall for that. But what if, instead of trying to convince yourself you're already successful, you started building evidence that you're becoming successful? I'm curious about your experience with this concept. Have you ever noticed a shift in your behavior when you started seeing yourself differently? Maybe there was a moment when you started thinking of yourself as a business owner or a content creator or someone who takes care of their health, and suddenly certain actions became easier. I'd love to hear about that moment because these identity shifts are fascinating and they happen differently for everyone. So this is where the magic happens. Instead of trying to fake it till you make it, you're building genuine evidence of who you're becoming. Every time you choose the harder right over the easier wrong, you're proving to yourself that you're the type of person who does hard things. When I was struggling to build my agency, I started asking myself, what would someone who runs a successful agency do? The answer was usually something I didn't want to do, like reaching out to potential clients, creating content consistently, or investing time in learning new skills. But by framing it as an identity question rather than a task question, it became easier to take action. I wasn't just checking items off a to-do list, I was becoming the person I wanted to be. My friend, the specific question you ask yourself matters. It needs to resonate with who you want to become. Here are some examples that have worked for me and others. What would someone 10 times more successful than me do in this situation? Or what would the best version of myself do right now? What would someone who has their life together do? What would a person who actually follows through on their commitments do? The key is finding a question that both challenges you and feels authentic. If asking, what would a billionaire do, feels too abstract, try, what would someone who's really good at this do? Or, what would the most disciplined person I know do? I'm about to walk you through the exact framework that helped my friend turn everything around, and it's something you can apply to whatever part of your life needs a shift. But before we dive in, let me show you why this approach works when nothing else seems to stick. So, here's why this approach is so effective. It addresses the root cause of most behavior change failures. Most people try to change their results by changing their actions, but they leave their identity unchanged. So they start working out, but they still see themselves as someone who's not athletic. They start a business, but they still see themselves as not really an entrepreneur. They try to be more social, but they still see themselves as just an introvert. The problem is that your actions will always tend to align with your identity. If there's a conflict between who you think you are and what you're trying to do, identity wins every time. But when you start with identity, when you start seeing yourself as the type of person who does these things, the actions become natural. They're not something you have to force yourself to do, they're just what someone like you does. So how do you actually implement this? It's simpler than you might think. First, identify who you want to become. Don't just think about what you want to achieve, think about what type of person achieves those things. What are their characteristics? How do they think? How do they behave? Second, find a simple question that captures this identity. Write it down and put it somewhere you'll see it regularly. This becomes your decision-making filter. Third, start using this question for small decisions throughout your day. Should you scroll social media or work on your business? What would a successful entrepreneur do? Should you order takeout or cook something healthy? What would someone who takes care of their health do? The beauty of this approach is that it's comprehensive. You don't need a different strategy for every area of your life. The same question can guide decisions about work, health, relationships, and personal growth. Going back to my friend, when I shared this concept with him, something clicked. He'd been thinking about his business as something he used to do, rather than something he was. He'd started seeing himself as someone who had a business, rather than someone who is a business owner. I told him to stop writing down goals and start writing down this question. What would someone who's serious about building a successful business do? Then I challenged him to ask himself this question at every decision point throughout his day. The results were almost immediate. He started showing up differently, more consistently, more intentionally. He began treating his business like a business rather than a side project. Within a few months, he'd not only recovered his previous income, but exceeded it. My friend, here's what's powerful about this approach. It's sustainable. When you're motivated by identity rather than just outcomes, you keep going, even when results are slow to come. Someone who's trying to lose weight might give up after a few weeks of not seeing dramatic changes, but someone who sees themselves as a healthy person will keep making healthy choices because that's just who they are. Someone who's trying to build a business might quit after a few rejections, but someone who sees themselves as an entrepreneur will keep pushing forward because entrepreneurs don't quit. This is why identity-based change creates lasting results. You're not just changing what you do, you're changing who you are. Most people know what they need to do to achieve their goals. The issue isn't knowledge, it's action. And the reason people don't take action is usually because it doesn't align with how they see themselves. But when you shift your identity first, the actions become inevitable. You're not forcing yourself to do things that feel foreign, you're simply being who you are. This is especially powerful when you face decisions you haven't anticipated. Life is unpredictable, and you can't plan for every situation. But if you have a clear sense of who you want to be, you can navigate any situation with confidence. The question I've been asking myself for years is simple. What would someone 10 times more successful than me do in this situation? It's helped me make better decisions about everything from how I spend my time to how I respond to challenges. But the specific question doesn't matter as much as the principle. Find a version that resonates with you and start using it consistently. Make it your default way of thinking about decisions. So here's my challenge for you. Instead of writing down your goals, write down the type of person you want to become. Then create a simple question that captures this identity. Start using this question for small decisions throughout your day. Don't try to change everything at once. Just start asking the question and following through on the answers. Remember, every action is a vote for the type of person you want to become. The more votes you cast in the right direction, the stronger that identity becomes. And the stronger that identity becomes, the easier it gets to do the things that create the results you want. The hardest respect to earn is your own, but it's also the most important. When you start seeing yourself as the type of person who does what needs to be done, everything changes. Here's what everything we've covered today really comes down to. Most people are living someone else's life, reacting to someone else's timeline, trying to become someone else's version of success. But you now have the blueprint to break free. Yes, the hardest respect to earn is your own. But when you finally build a mind so strong it scares people, when you become someone who keeps their word to themselves, that's when you stop asking for space and start taking it. Your choice, your life. Start now.